Welcome to episode 4 of the J&J Podcast. I'm Jamie.
This is Jameson.
We want to invite everybody back in today. We've got some things coming up. I'm going to pass it over to our producer, Zach, to kick us off.
Yes, sir. First on the docket, the Lions were playing games with the Cowboys. So, Jamie, I'll pass it right back off to you. Go ahead and get it started.
Appreciate it, Zach. I'm laughing because for those of you that don't know, I used to be a Dallas Cowboys fan. Have been a Cowboys fan for a while. I'm talking about Tony Dorsett, Dallas Cowboys fan, all the ups and downs with Troy Aikman, the Jimmy Johnson years. And then about 4 years ago, I said, I'm done. Can't do it anymore. Jerry Jones is a cancer, and I can't do it anymore. There are too many roller coasters with the Dallas Cowboys. So as I watched the annihilation yesterday, as I watched Jerry Jones, I think it was his 82nd birthday, celebrate his birthday by his team getting beat like they stole something. It was pleasurable to me to watch. It was downright fun. I was giddy watching that game. I was doing cartwheels, at least in my mind, watching that game because I can't stand Jerry Jones. The Dallas Cowboys will never be America's team. I'm air quotes, America's team, as long as Jerry Jones continues to run that organization. I appreciate the fact that the Detroit Lions ran the score up and that they were throwing passes with 3 minutes left in the game like they were down 20. I loved it. We could talk about the X's and O's. Well, there were X's and O's on one side. On the other side, they apparently were playing hopscotch. But I'm going to pass it over to you, Jameson, get your input. I'm not even really going to talk about the X's and O's. I just wanted to talk about how pleased I was to see that beat down.
Well, first off, I'm glad that I had to go on mute, but I'm getting my composure. But I'll say this, like you said, we used to be Dallas Cowboys fans, and that was, first off, like you said, it was Jerry Jones' 82nd birthday, so that was already funny enough. But what made things even funnier to me was the fact that was supposed to be like such a big, home game for the Cowboys, the Lions, same division type of game. And the Lions, that it got to the point, no troll. Like, if you watch the game, you would see this. They were throwing back, shoulder, face to 300-pound linemen on their team. And on top of that, I've never seen this in my life. Like, I thought I was watching an NFL Street gameplay. If y'all remember the NFL Street video game. But there was literally a play later on in that game where they ran a hook and ladder. Like, I've never seen that in my life, a hook and ladder to a 300-pound lineman. And the brother scored. I've never seen that in my life. Like, that not only did the X's and O's go well, but it's like they wanted to flat out embarrass the Cowboys, and they did on national television. And like I said, to make matters worse, like, it was Jerry Jones' birthday. And to take things even a step further, I'm going to put all the blame on Jerry Jones. Like, I know it would be easy right now to say, oh, this is Dak Prescott's fault, which Dak Prescott does have to play better. Like, his best performance can't be in the post-game interviews, like just saying the right things. He actually needs to go out there and perform on the field. So I'm not going to let him off the hook. And Mike McCarthy, God bless his soul, but I'm going to just be honest, like, he's not really a good NFL head coach. But once again, who decided to hire Mike McCarthy? Jerry Jones. Who decided to let Kellen Moore go this offseason as their offensive coordinator? Jerry Jones. Who decided not to give Derrick Henry the bag this offseason? Jerry Jones. Who decided to wait all offseason to pay Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb, garnishing their actual chemistry that they were able to build up over the offseason? Once again, Jerry Jones. Who went out there and thought that putting Rico Dowdle out there as running back one was going to make a difference? Jerry Jones. So, like I said, all fingers point back to Jerry Jones, but I'll be honest, like, it was pleasing for me to watch, but I've never seen a team embarrass the Cowboys like that. Like, I think the last time the Cowboys have been embarrassed like that was whenever T.O. was on the 49ers and ran out there to the star. Outside of that, I haven't seen the Cowboys get flat out embarrassed like that. It's been years.
Well, if you think about now, I will talk about a little bit about the X's and O's.
Yeah.
And you're absolutely right. It does come down to the decisions that Jerry Jones made. His mentor was Al Davis, and I'm just gonna say it. The that team after he Al Davis decided, well, actually he did decide, he passed away. After his son took over, they at least, the Raiders at least were a decent team. Al Davis, to be perfectly honest with you, kind of ran the team to the ground because he thought he was smarter than everybody else. If you look at the teams that have been successful, Jerry Jones is the owner, he's the GM, he's really the coach. He goes to, as Bill Parcells said years ago, if you want me to do the cooking, at least let me buy some of the groceries. And the truth of the matter is, Jerry Jones is the cook, he's the chef, he's the shopper. At this point, he's the man back there cutting the deli meat.
He might as well be the cashier.
That's what I was about to say. By the way, he also owns the store.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm looking at this situation and I'm like, this is the way it's been. All this talk about, Cowboys being America's team, I could no longer stomach it. And from an X's and O's perspective, Ezekiel Elliott is your starting running back. No disrespect to Zeke, but those days are over for him.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at Tony Pollard and what Tony Pollard was actually able to do yesterday, and I'm thinking, so you decided to let Tony Pollard go because didn't want to pay him a little bit more, but you bring back Ezekiel Elliott, who I think in the last 2 games hasn't even gotten 50 yards rushing.
No.
So from an X's and O's perspective, CeeDee Lamb and Dak, it's obvious they're not on the same page. I personally don't think CeeDee Lamb likes Dak Prescott.
Facts.
It's shown with their interaction on the sideline. And so the Cowboys are now 3-3?
Yeah.
They may be lucky to win 8 games this year.
I agree.
That's the way I see it. Yes.
Here's what I was going to say, too. And honestly, because it'll be easy to just sit here and just talk about how bad the Cowboys are, but I also have to give a lot of credit to the Lions. And I will say this, man, just, the landscape of the NFL changes from week to week. But right now, I think the Ravens, and we'll talk about the Ravens a little bit later, but I think right now, on paper and from what I've seen, the product I've seen on the field, the Ravens and Lions might be the best 2 teams right now in football. Because what I saw yesterday with the Lions, what do we always say is the key recipe for success on the offensive side of the ball? Being able to run the football. And
Absolutely.
The 2-headed monster they have with Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery, and Lord knows I'm thankful for David Montgomery. That brother won me my fantasy game yesterday. But that 2-headed monster that they have, and then Ben Johnson, their offensive coordinator, like I said, that's why he was such a coveted name this past offseason for some of the, the head coaching vacancies. But how he's been able to just, basically kind of rejuvenate Jared Goff's career, after, that trade for whenever, he ended up getting acquired by the Lions. But just even yesterday, Jared Goff was out there just slinging the football around, just throwing slants, post routes, fade routes. And then, like I even said, their receiving core is insane. Who did I tell you was going to be an X factor for the Lions coming into this season, if you remember?
Jameson Williams.
Literally, I told you that. And what has he done this year? Not only do they have him and Amon-Ra St. Brown, but now, what's his name? Sam Laporte is also starting to find, his groove within the offense. So, honestly, on paper, they're unstoppable. The only thing that I hate for them going forward now, though, is on the defensive side of the ball. And like I said, man, prayers up for Aiden Hutchinson, man. That was one of the worst injuries I've ever seen, witnessed live on television. But them not having Aiden Hutchinson for the, probably the remainder of the season, that's something that they're going to honestly have to monitor. But knowing the Lions organization, they might go out there and try to trade for, a defensive end that can kind of, they're not going to get the same type of production as they would from an Aiden Hutchinson. But if they can go out there and trade for a decent, defensive end, maybe someone like Hassan Reddick on the Jets right now, I feel like they'll still be fine. And honestly, they might mess around and make the Super Bowl out of the NFC. We'll see what happens, though.
No, I just to put a bow on that game, yes, you have to give credit I was skeptical about Dan Campbell, to be
Yeah.
perfectly honest, when they first hired him, because I thought, okay, can he really coach?
Yeah.
Is he just a rah rah kind of guy? Is he just one of those? Oh, they'll run through a brick wall. No, no, no. He's a he's actually what a coach should be,
Mm-hmm.
and you can tell that he trusts and he delegates. Something that the Cowboys know absolutely nothing about. He delegates, as you mentioned, Ben Johnson. That defense is playing better and better on a weekly basis. And I heard the flex. Yeah, you told me about Jameson Williams. I heard you kind of slide that in. I did draft him in my fantasy league, and you're right. I played him this week. So yeah, I agree with you. Jameson Williams has the potential to be really really good. I see crazy potential in him. I agree with you. Jared Goff looks like who folks thought he was going to be when he was first drafted.
Yep.
Takes care of the football, can make every throw. We've always known he can make every throw. He just wasn't in the right situation. And what people need to understand is, and it shows, when you give a guy the right system, you give a guy actual time, and you actually put around him with some help. He can flourish. He can actually be the player that you thought that he was going to be. So, kudos to the Lions. But yeah, I'm happy that they did what they did. Almost put a 50 piece on the Cowboys, and I am happy about that.
And I will say this too, and we'll go and move on. But another thing that stood out to me too was not only the 300-pound lineman out here running hook and ladders, but it got so bad. David Montgomery was doing Disney Channel celebrations. I've never seen that in my life. Like, I've never seen that in my life in a primetime game. But we'll go and move on. Yeah, like, and I'll be honest. This is the last thing I'm gonna say. I think the Cowboys season is already done. I think if I'm Jerry Jones, I already start looking towards. They might need to try. I hate using this word, but they need to try to tank for a top draft pick, because at this point, it's not getting any better, and they're gonna mess around. Honestly, they might end up finishing third or even dead last in that division, because the Giants are only one game behind them right now, and they don't even have Malik Neighbors back. He's coming back next week, and you see how the Eagles and Commanders have been playing. We'll get to them a little bit later too, but I think the Cowboys season is already done, and it's wild to say that it's been 4 weeks now, 4 or 5 weeks. That's insane.
Yeah. Yep. Agreed.
But next topic I wanted to talk about, and it's crazy. I actually alluded to this a couple weeks ago that this might potentially happen, but it still kind of shocked me, was the Robert Saleh firing for the Jets. But wanted to get your thoughts on that first.
Yeah. So I think it was handled poorly.
Yeah.
But I'm not surprised. This is kind of the kind of stuff that the Jets have done very recently. I think if you start to look at owners in the NFL, Woody Johnson is right there. He's not nearly as bad, obviously, as Jerry Jones, because he doesn't have his hands in everything. But it's the type of environment that I think has been created there, because they actually, like, the security folks walked him out. Like, what is that about? Like, what did he do that was so bad? And I'm just going to be honest with you. The walking him out, to me, looks worse. And it looks worse for Aaron Rodgers, because I think he's actually the problem. You can't deny, as we've talked about before, that Father Time catches us all. He's a 41-year-old quarterback who didn't spend the offseason, who didn't attend mandatories, who didn't spend the offseason developing rapport with his wide receivers. He and Garrett Wilson are starting to build that chemistry now, but that's chemistry that could have been built during the offseason. He refused to do that. Don't even get me started about the antics and all the stuff that he says off the field. But on the field, he hasn't looked good. He is part of the reason they are where they are. And I'm not going to say he's the only reason, but it's just like you hear other analysts say. A quarterback, when they're playing well, gets a lot of the praise. And when they're not playing well, they get a lot of the, pushback, and they get a lot of the blame. Dan Orlovsky had the audacity to come on ESPN and say, I'm not here to talk about a Hall of Famer and whether or not he's playing well. What?
Yeah.
What are you talking about? You do that with everybody else. So because he's a Hall of Famer, you can't criticize him. If anything, you should be able to criticize him more because of how well he's played and how poorly he's currently playing. So I think that Saleh was the scapegoat. I don't like how that whole thing went down. I don't like the fact that he had to be escorted. That not had to be, but that they actually escorted him out. It's a very bad look, and I'm not surprised because it's the New York Jets.
No, I completely agree. Like 1,000% with everything you just said. And something that honestly kind of stood out to me was, and I said this, Robert Saleh was a defensive guy coming into this job. Like people can say what they want about, oh well, he might not have been the best leader as a coach. What I know is, that's a very important quality. Something like, for example, we're just talking about the Lions. That's something that Dan Campbell has. But like, I'm gonna just be honest. Like, if you're inheriting Aaron Rodgers and everything that comes with that, and like you said, even over the offseason, like the Jets pretty much kind of showed early on that this is Aaron Rodgers' franchise. You literally like it's called mandatory workouts over the offseason for a reason. Like that mandatory is there for a reason. It wasn't voluntary, and like you said, Aaron Rodgers didn't show up, and the Jets didn't find him. They didn't have a problem with it. They approved it. So what you already set precedence right there is just that, yeah, I mean, Robert Saleh is the coach, but Aaron Rodgers supersedes that. He has that power. And then another thing that didn't sit right about me, which, like I said, this season, the Jets' defense has been fine. The offense has been pedestrian. And I'm not going to put that blame on Robert Saleh. Like I told you, really the blame should have been on Aaron Rodgers and the offensive coordinator that he brought with the power that he had over to the Jets and Nathaniel Hackett. And to make matters worse, after they fired Robert Saleh, they immediately took Nathaniel Hackett off the offensive coordinator duties. So what does that show you? That Robert Saleh probably should have kept his job and Nathaniel Hackett was the problem. And once again, Aaron Rodgers. I don't understand how Aaron Rodgers can throw 3 Stevies against the Vikings and then Robert Saleh loses his job. That's not his fault. He didn't throw the Stevies. You get what I'm saying? So, and I will say this. Hearing the response from some of the players like Sauce Gardner was just defending Robert Saleh to the T. Like, I think, honestly, this has much more to do, like you said, about them trying to use Robert Saleh as the scapegoat. And my prayer for him is that, honestly, because he might not have been the best head coach, but I pray that, and I feel like he will get another opportunity to be a really good defensive coordinator for a different NFL organization because the Jets are pretty poverty right now. And to make matters worse, they haven't even hired a coach. Like, I feel like if you're gonna fire a coach mid-season, you need to already have in mind, okay, who's gonna be the next guy. Like this interim head coach, it's probably gonna be worse, in my opinion. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I think to wrap that up, I think a lot of teams don't make a decision to bring somebody else in, and I won't say mid-season, but you've already played 6 games,
yeah.
Or would have played 6 games. So if you decide to make that move, but you don't have a plan for, we're gonna make sure that this guy is the interim, and you decide that Nathaniel Hackett no longer has the play calling, then that, to your point, that shows you really didn't have a plan.
Yep.
You just decided to make him the scapegoat because Aaron Rodgers is your quarterback. And I'll make this real quick comparison. It's just like folks who talk about LeBron James saying, well, LeBron is the GM. He makes the decisions for the Lakers. You can't convince me that Aaron Rodgers didn't have a say. They didn't at least consult with him. And to me, he's gotten Mike McCarthy fired, and now he's gotten Robert Saleh fired. Mm-hmm. And he hasn't looked good.
Nope.
So I think he needs to step up and show some accountability for the fact that he's not playing well. And as you were mentioning it, in my opinion, he's the main reason for why they're not playing well.
No, I completely agree. And on the flip side, let's go and transition to a team that actually is looking good right now. And we've talked about them week to week, but that's the Baltimore Ravens. And honestly, that was the game yesterday against the Commanders that I was most looking forward to watching. And honestly, that game was nothing short of spectacular. Jaden Daniels came to play. But I will say this, man, and I know I keep saying it from week to week, but Lamar Jackson really might end up winning his 3rd straight MVP. And what's making it scary is Lamar Jackson, because he's my favorite player, and I've noticed this, he's continued to become a better passer every single season he's been in the National Football League. Like even yesterday, he had 323 passing yards, and what was so scary about that was dudes were wide open. Like Mark Andrews, he finally started to get him involved more. People that have paid attention, his number 1 target right now is not Zay Flowers, it's Isaiah Likely. I mean, Zay Flowers had a monster game yesterday. He had the most receiving yards in a half ever for a Ravens wide receiver. But just looking at, I mean, Zay Flowers had over 130 receiving yards. Mark Andrews had over 50 receiving yards. Isaiah Likely had a great game. Like, it was just such a balanced effort on offense where it's just like Lamar had over 300 passing yards but only one touchdown, and they still, like, and part of that was the run game was able to be established early again with Derrick Henry. But I'm not going to harp on the Ravens too long, but I'll just say this, and I said this like 2 episodes again on the podcast. I don't see what team is beating them right now in the regular season. If they, continue to play their game. Like, there are teams out there like the Lions that can compete and the 49ers that match up well. But if the Ravens continue to run the football like that and Lamar Jackson keeps playing at an MVP level, I feel like the Super Bowl is theirs to lose this year. But your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, Lamar is special. It is. It's just it's must-see TV when he's on the field.
Yeah.
And when you consider, everybody talked about, 'cause I saw a couple of things on social media, and it said everybody is Lamar Jackson until Lamar Jackson steps on the field.
Yep.
There was the comparisons of Jaden Daniels, he's a better passer and all of that.
Yeah, when Ryan Clark said that, I was like, bro, you need to be drug tested, because that's an insane statement. Dad, I'm sorry to cut you off, but Ryan Clark also said 2 years ago, they asked him the question, they said, what quarterback would you rather have on a Super Bowl team, like who could get you there? He said he would take Kyler Murray over Lamar Jackson. I'm like, brother, that's 2 bad. That's 2 stinker takes. That's unacceptable.
I wouldn't be using him to place any bets for me. No. That's for doggone sure.
Yeah.
No. So I completely agree. Derrick Henry, he established a run, but he didn't have, it was a great day, a good day of running, but it wasn't until when they needed the game to be, shut down.
Yep.
They handed him the ball, and I was like, man, they can't stop this dude when he wants. So they needed to go ahead and run the clock. And they also needed to get the first down, and I think he picked up 30 yards. They basically couldn't stop him from getting to the end zone. He got tackled near the end zone. When you consider that combination, the fact that Lamar, I think he ended up with over 60 yards rushing, maybe 50 or 60
yards 40.
Rushing. He had 40. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
So when you consider that, and you look at how, to your point, he has improved every single year. It's like they used to talk about Kobe. Kobe added something to his game every year.
Yep.
Lamar Jackson has added something to his game in addition to how he passes the football. So I agree with you. They might be the team to beat. I think he stands a very good chance of winning another MVP if John Harbaugh is smart enough to continue to use the same formula.
And that's the caveat.
I want if I were at the Super Bowl last year, not the Super Bowl, but when they played the Chiefs, if I were at that game, I would have gone on the sideline and I would have slapped John Harbaugh. I really would have. I would have looked at him and I would have said, why is this cat throwing the ball 42 times when you have the best running offense in the league? Help me understand that, John Harbaugh. What are you doing? Okay, we don't condone violence. I'm sorry.
But what makes it worse, like you said, is
that's what I felt like.
Derrick Henry, that wasn't even necessarily a crazy game for him, and he had 132 yards for 2 tutties. And to take it even a step further, him and Lamar Jackson are both top 10 right now in rushing yards in the entire NFL. And I just said Lamar Jackson like he's a quarterback. Like he's
right.
Like that is the fact that both of them are in the top 10. And that's what I said. What makes it so scary is just like their run game is so good. Lamar, the passing game is so much easier. Like when I tell you watching that game, dudes were wide open. Like you could literally throw the football in the air, go grab a hot dog from the concession stand, come back, and dudes were still wide open. Like it was insane. But because so much emphasis put on the run, and even to end off that game yesterday, I remember it was 3rd and 1. You should have seen how the way they loaded the box because they were expecting a Derrick Henry run. What does Lamar Jackson do? Turn around, run to that left sideline, and and speaking of that, was a dirty hit by Jeremy Chin on Lamar Jackson.
It was dirty.
Yeah, I'm glad his teammates stood up for him. That's what I love to see. But we'll go and move on to another topic. But Also, I want to say this before we move on. I got to give a huge shout out to the Commanders again too, because they came to play. That was a really good game. Like, and what it shows is, like we were talking about the Cowboys. I think the Commanders are gonna win that division, pretty
I
easily
agree.
at this point. But next thing we're gonna talk about is, and Jaden Daniels will be included. This is some of the rookie quarterbacks from yesterday. But I'll go and let you give your takes on that first.
Yeah, so Caleb Williams. So I think we talked a little bit last week about him finding his comfort zone. He didn't find it. He's living in it now.
Yeah.
I mean, he has gotten comfortable. He has a blanket around him. It might be a heated blanket because the comfort zone is there. He was doing so. He looked like he looked in college yesterday. With the way that he was throwing the football, he had a command of the offense. 4 touchdowns. Should have been 5 if doggone it, DJ Moore had scored on that, because that was going to be a touchdown for me. I have DJ Moore on my fantasy team. And yeah, he had a command of the offense. I will say so. And then we also saw Drake May make his debut. And of course,
Special.
when he first started, it was a little bit. People were like, "Oh," because he threw an interception, but then he proceeded to throw 3 touchdowns.
Yeah.
When I'm looking at this draft class, I mean, and Jaden Daniels, actually, he kept the game tight. He kept the game close against Lamar Jackson.
Yeah.
So when I look at those 3, the way that they played yesterday, Drake May in his first start did some really good things. I know there's some things he wants to clean up, but in your starting NFL game, one of those, the touchdown that he threw, he put exactly the perfect air underneath the ball, dropped that thing in there like a basket full of biscuit, and it was beautiful to see. So I think that we're going to have to, look maybe 4 or 5 years, 3 or 4 years down the road, but this might be one of the best QB draft classes that I've seen in a while.
No, I completely agree. And honestly, there's 2 things. First, on the Caleb Williams train, he just looks more poised from week to week. And like you said, like people said coming into the NFL, he wouldn't be able to do a lot of the stuff that he did in college. But it's like he did it yesterday, and the brother did it in London. He had tea and crumpets at halftime. The brother was
Yeah,
special. The brother was special. But the thing about Drake May too is, first off, I'm gonna say I'm at least glad there's something positive coming out of Carolina football this year, related to them. So shout out to Drake May first of all, and then I will say this, because I heard people debating this yesterday. Like, I heard people say, were the Patriots playing Drake May too early? And honestly, in the back of my mind, of course, seeing what happened, with Bryce Young with the Panthers, I was like, maybe they are rushing him. But like you said, after that first interception that he threw, he was very impressive. And then to take things even a step further, people got to realize their offensive line was compromised yesterday. So the fact that he was able to put up those type of numbers against the Texans team, like the Texans, we'll get to, I know we'll talk about C.J. Stroud probably a little bit later on, but it's like the Texans are a top 5 to 10 team right now in the NFL, and it's like the fact that you were able to actually compete, I mean, they ended up blowing them out. But, you kept the game relatively close at first, against C.J. Stroud and the Texans offense, and the Texans have shockingly one of the best defenses right now. The fact they were able to do all of that was very impressive, but like you said, long term, this could be one of the best quarterback classes we've seen in the last decade, easily, the way it's looking right now. But speaking of impressive quarterbacks, and I know this year guys, both are our guys, but want to get your thoughts on Jordan Love's performance yesterday against the Cardinals, because that we keep talking about him from week to week, but it's just he's very impressive, man. But your thoughts?
Yeah, he's I mean, I don't necessarily have a team anymore, but I certainly have players that I pay attention to.
Yeah.
The stuff that Jordan Love is doing. So he's what Aaron Rodgers used to be.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not getting ready to quite put him, because I don't like to do those comparisons.
Yeah.
But he reminds me so much of the kinds of things. There was one pass that he threw, where it was off his back foot and he lobbed it literally only where his wide receiver could get it. And I was like, what are you?
It was Dobbs.
Dobbs. That's
Yep.
right. Over in the corner. I said, what are you? What a pass.
Yeah.
It was crazy. So I'm looking at him talking about, having command of an offense and looking comfortable and like, okay, let's just say it. He's what Dak Prescott should be looking like
Facts.
right now. And I mean, like, I just had to ask. So you literally had to tell me who the wide receiver was.
And that's the
Am
point.
I
It's just
saying,
like Jordan Love don't even have a CeeDee Lamb. You know what I'm saying?
right?
Like,
That's my point.
and also what's scary about the Packers is too, like, they've gone under the radar, which is wild. Because I know before the season, and I think part of that was because, after Jordan Love's injury, like, they had Malik Willis for a couple weeks. It wasn't the same. I mean, they still were winning games, and we talked about that. But people better, like, the Packers are clicking. And it's like Jordan Love's confidence is continuing to build. Like, he's special. And I will say long term, the Packers are another team that come playoff time, man. The Cowboys know this firsthand. You don't want to play the Pack. I don't care if it's the wild card, NFC champion. Like, you don't want to match up against the Packers at all. Like, because not only is their offense elite, but like you should have seen. I know you probably watched the game, but the things that their defense have been able to do the last couple of weeks too have been very impressive. So we'll see what happens. Last game we want to talk about is, we can keep this brief, is the Eagles versus the Browns. We've been saying this for weeks, but Deshaun Watson, brother, there's no way out of this one. You're done.
You're done.
He made a couple plays yesterday in the second half, but they just keep having pedestrian starts to the game. And like you said, even when Nick Chubb comes back soon, I don't think that's going to be enough. Like, Deshaun Watson, that brother's stealing money. He's stealing money from the Cleveland Browns. I feel bad for the city of Cleveland, because this is once again another quarterback situation that's failed for them. But like you said, what makes things worse though is they have Jameis Winston as a backup, which right now I feel like will give them a better chance to win going forward. Because prime example is yesterday, the Eagles didn't have that crazy of a game. They won that game 20-16. I'm telling you, if Jameis Winston plays that game, I guarantee you the Browns probably win that game.
Jameis puts up 2 more touchdowns.
Yeah, like,
I'm just
why?
because
Yeah,
here's the thing: he's not afraid to throw the football.
exactly.
He's going to get the football down. I don't care. Listen, Nick Chubb Rock, it doesn't matter. They're scrubs. They're not going to win. If Deshaun Watson continues to be their quarterback, they're not going to win.
Yeah.
I just don't see it, and I'll be honest. The Eagles are still in trouble.
Yeah,
because
I was just about to say that.
Yeah, so the Eagles are still in trouble if you're struggling to beat the Browns. I mean, Jalen Hurts actually looked okay.
Yeah.
Made some good passes or whatever. The Eagles can't, like, defensively, they can't stop a cold.
No.
It is not fun to watch them now. They were an up-and-coming team. It feels like something's just been off.
It's Nick
And
Sirianni.
I was about to mention, when your head coach is yelling at fans.
Yeah, when you won by 4 points against the Browns. Like, come on, man.
Exactly. Come on, dude. I mean, so what it tells me is he's it's getting to him.
Yeah.
He's overwhelmed, I think.
But see,
And
this is another thing. Back to the rock. My fault. Go ahead.
No, and I was going to say, and players can sense that.
Yeah.
And if he's feeling overwhelmed, players can sense that, and they play tight.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's the way the Eagles have been playing. They've been playing tight.
And this is no disrespect, because I never asked for somebody to lose their job. That's still that's someone's livelihood. But the fact that Robert Saleh lost his job and Nick Sirianni's still on the sidelines, that's nasty work. But we'll leave it at that.
Y'all know what else is nasty work? Everything that's going on in Alabama right now. So switch it over to college football and lead off with that, because that's crazy.
Yeah. I will say, and I was hyping up Alabama crazy, a couple weeks ago, and I'm still not about to be one of those dudes just going to jump off the bandwagon. Like, they still were able to win that game against South Carolina, but Lord knows, Jesus is looking over them, because they should have lost that game. I still don't know how they ended up winning that game. I mean, Jalen Milroe made some, very exceptional plays on the stretch. But I will say, long term, Alabama's still going to be scary come college football playoff time. Like, it'd be different if they had the same format last year, where it's just the top 4 teams. Like, the fact that there's going to be so many teams in the college football playoff, like, I don't care what team it is. By the time you get to the playoffs, like, no one wants to play against Alabama, whether it be Georgia, Texas, Miami, any of these teams. So, of course, there's some things that are somewhat alarming, but I rather these things happen now for Alabama than, closer to playoff time. So I think they still have plenty of time to clean things up. And I still got to give them a little bit of grace. It's not like Nick Saban is still there. This is a first-year head coach. He's still trying to implement a lot of, his offensive and defensive schemes. So, I'm not gonna overreact. But if they would have lost that game, I would have been very alarmed.
Well, I'm not gonna overreact, but they're walking around with some four-leaf clovers.
Yeah.
There's a leprechaun. They're magically delicious. Walking around because they've been lucky the last 2 weeks.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. There's a four-leaf clover in somebody's pocket. I'm with you, but I'm not necessarily on the bandwagon with you anyway. But I don't necessarily think that people are shaking in their boots like they normally would be for Alabama.
Yeah.
Folks see they are, they're vulnerable right now, and I do believe that there are teams that will come out and they've kind of been able to, look at them play the past couple of weeks. They see where the vulnerabilities are, and I think they'll start to exploit those. I do believe, like you said, that there is a transition period, and I think that they'll be okay. But I don't think the days of, at least for another year or two or a couple of years, the days of Alabama, striking fear in teams, I think this year that's definitely not happening. So It'll be interesting how it plays out.
Another interesting thing, game I want to talk about is, we're Colorado fans. We're rooting for Dion and them, but the Colorado-Kansas State game, I'll be honest, I know Colorado lost that game, but I was still very impressed with the performance that they put up. Like, that game came down to the wire, and also Kansas State was ranked number 18 in the nation going into that game. Colorado was the underdog, so honestly, it was a great sign for me that not only were they able to keep that game close, but they genuinely had a chance to win that game down the stretch. And they did all that. Travis Hunter got hurt in the first half. So that's something also to monitor too. I know it's like they're saying it's a shoulder injury. I'm praying that, because what did we talk about with his Heisman hopes? The only way he's going to win the Heisman is if he stays healthy.
If he stays healthy,
so,
that's right.
And we both said that too. It's just like we're rooting for him to do it, but it's just not realistic to play 550 plays a game and not get injured at all, especially when, like, you're that good. It's not like he's just thrown in there to be a decoy. Like, he's the best offensive weapon they have outside of Shedeur, and he's the best defensive weapon they have. So we knew he was bound to sadly get injured at some point. I'm just hoping it's not a long-term nagging injury for him. But I will say Colorado, man, they're still showing a whole lot of promise. And like I said, they've already exceeded expectations this year, in my opinion. Like, they already have 4 wins, the same amount they won all of last season. So I'm not really alarmed. I'm more impressed with Colorado. The fact that what they showed was they were able to actually go play against a ranked opponent and hold their own. And like I said, they genuinely had a chance to win that game. So, long term, I'm just going to continue to monitor Colorado and especially Travis Hunter's health. And then the last game, the game of the week I want to talk about before I let you talk about Carolina football was the Oregon versus Ohio State game. That was honestly, just watching that on TV, that looked like one of the most insane, college football game environments outside of, the college football playoff. But honestly, I picked Ohio State to win that game, but that game was nothing short of spectacular. Like, both quarterbacks played well. Shout out to Will Howard. It's just like, Dylan Gabriel just gave them a little bit more down the stretch with Oregon. And then I will say this, Oregon's run game is elite as well. Like, Ohio State has a really good run game with Quinshawn Judkins, but the way they were able to run the ball in that game, and they were timely runs. Like, they had runs when, they needed to gain 2 yards. They were able to pretty much get them every single time. So, similar to the Alabama-Georgia game, that, like, hopefully we'll get to see Oregon versus Ohio State again at some point, whether it be the national championship game, the game before that. Like, I hope we get to see that again. But yeah, I'll go and transition over to Carolina football. I know you wanted to talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, real quickly though, with the Oregon-Ohio State game.
Yeah.
What did you think about what was on purpose to have the 12 players on the field, so that he could kind of figure out? He got that, I think he got a penalty for it.
Yeah.
By having the 12 players on the field at the very end. Some people said that it was, sketchy, and then some people said, well, it was actually smart. I mean, if it's within the rules and you're able to actually, to actually make it happen, I, I think it's cool.
I think it was
And
smart.
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So the reason I brought that up is because in the Carolina football game, and for those um, who don't know, I'm a Tar Heel, and I'm excited about basketball season because it has become difficult to watch Carolina football. I'm not going to go all in this week, but I saw when Georgia Tech literally, I think there were probably 5 different incidents where players, and you can't call it anything but faking. The commentators even said it. They were like, "Oh, he was fine just a second ago," and every single time the player jumped up and ran to the sideline. They did it like 5 or 6 times. So it was, when I watched that again, it's in within the rules of the game, but I don't like it. Carolina football has to make some changes. I'm not going to go all in because it was honestly a sad day. Tylee Kraft ended up passing away, and I don't think that most of the players knew he had passed away that morning, and most of the players didn't know. If you saw any of the highlights, Mac
Yeah.
Brown, right now, listen, I mean, I'm not, as you talked about earlier, I'm not going to talk about folks losing their jobs or whatever, but as a human being, he's a great person.
Yeah.
And, he's been talking about Tylee Kraft all year. You saw him hug, Tylee's mom and the family during the course of the game, at the beginning of the game. They knew then, apparently, that Tylee had passed away.
Yeah.
And that's
go,
a heavy heart.
Yeah. And then to go try to play a football game is
Yeah, that was tough. So I'm certainly disappointed in Carolina football. I think we can do better. We are. I don't want the moniker of we're just a basketball school, because I think we can be a football school. We have the resources, and we certainly have the right environment. But some changes are going to have to be made, and I'll leave it at that.
sounds good. Yeah.
Well, I was gonna try to throw in a witty little segment or segue over, but prayers and condolences to the family and friends involved. As we switch it over, Jay, Jameson, we were watching the WNBA Finals. We watched Game 1 together, so we switch over to that. Game 1 was pretty good. Game 2 wasn't as crazy as an overtime game, but go ahead and get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, first off, that game 1, they were already saying like that was actually the most viewed game 1 of a WNBA Finals they've ever had in the WNBA. So, like I said, we predicted this, and we wanted to see the matchup of the Lynx and the Liberty. So I'm so glad that's ended up happening. But that game 1 game was nothing short of spectacular. And we keep singing her praises, but Nafisa Collier is special. And it'll also, like, I bring up her name because it's gonna bring me to my points about game 2. But game 1, it was really her and Courtney Williams. Like the grit and the determination that they play with as a team to come back from 18 points down was just very impressive. And then I'll be honest, like, I know they lost game 2 yesterday, and like I said, part of and I said this before the series even started. It's sad, but if Nafisa Collier doesn't really get 25 to 30 points, they have no chance of winning because the Liberty just have too many scoring threats. And even yesterday, like, they had somewhat of a chance. They were down by 10 at halftime, and they tried to go on a little bit of a run to start the third quarter, but that was pretty much the Liberty's game from start to finish. And honestly, too, when Breanna Stewart's not only scoring the basketball like she did in game 2, but she had 7 steals. That's a WNBA Finals record in it for a single game. But when Breanna Stewart's not only scoring the ball like she's always been capable of doing, but adding 7 steals to that, you're more than likely not going to win the game, especially a WNBA Finals game like that where Nafisa Collier didn't put up the most insane numbers. But I will say, long term, I still think the Liberty are going to ultimately win this series, but the Lynx handle business. Like, they were able to win one of those 2 games on the road. So, honestly, like I said, I'm still picking the Liberty to win this series, but anything can happen because now it's going back to Minnesota for Game 3. So, my gut is telling me that the Liberty are going to win the series, but I'm really rooting for the Lynx to win because I would love to see Nafisa Collier. And trust me, the Minnesotans would love to see a basketball championship because they're not getting one any. I mean, they might get one with the Timberwolves sometime soon, but up until this, they've really had nothing to ride home about basketball wise. So,
Well, they did. Oh, you forgot about Maya Moore.
well, I'm
You
talking
forgot
about
about
just
those
I'm just saying like in the past,
recent
yeah,
years. Recent
like
years.
6 7 years. I mean, because now the Timberwolves, in the NBA they have Anthony Edwards, like they're on the rise, but like I said, it'll be just really good for a smaller market team like that, especially from the WNBA perspective to actually win a championship. But we'll see what happens. But last thing I'll say before I transition over to you is this just also shows like what we've been talking about the WNBA has to continue to do a better job of just marketing their players because there's more players than just Caitlin Clark and like there's more players than Angel Reese, Caitlin Clark, and just some of these other names that we always hear. Like Nafisa Collier should be right up there. Players like that. So we'll see what continues to happen. But overall, it's just this year's WNBA Finals has just been great for basketball in general.
No, I agree. I think we talked about the Sun, the Lynx actually beating the Sun because I felt like they would be a better matchup for the Liberty. Defensively, they do a better job. And I completely agree with you that Nafisa Collier, if she's not scoring 25 a game, then they struggle.
Yeah.
They'll struggle to beat the Liberty. Although from a defensive perspective, they're better equipped than the Connecticut Sun were to handle them defensively, and they've done a better job of that. She is special. I think that she might be next year early. I mean, again, it's early, but my early prediction is she could potentially be the MVP next year. That's how tough she's been.
Yeah.
So I think, I will definitely look at her being, the person who people have to be on the lookout for. And to your point, Angel Reese, Caitlin Clark, they're on the rise. Cameron Brink will be back from injury. All that's good, but they need to pay attention to, the Nafisa Colliers of the world, the Alyssa Thomases of the world. Those are players that are up and coming. Nafisa Collier's doing it. So last thing that I'll say is I agree with you. I think it's probably going to be the Liberty, but I wouldn't be completely shocked if the Lynx do it. I wouldn't mind them being the winners because I think Nafisa Collier is special.
Yeah, I completely agree.
I'm very glad Maya Moore got some love. That moved the needle for me. So as we segue over, Jameson, what moved the needle for you?
I got two things. First, the first person that moved the needle for me was Juju Watkins, and it's not because of her actual play on the court, but the fact that she was just named, she just got a crazy endorsement deal with Nike. It makes her one of the highest paid women athletes, and she's literally just about to be a sophomore in college. It's insane, and it also just makes me very excited to see what USC, what their women's basketball team does this year. They're my early prediction to actually win the national championship, so we'll see. But I'm very excited to watch Juju play this year. And then the second, it's actually a team that moved the needle for me this week was the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And the reason why I say that is, my thoughts and prayers go out to everybody that was affected, in Florida with the hurricane. But the fact that they even talked about, they literally, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers organization, rented 300 seat capacity planes and basically flew out everybody's families, their dogs, all their loved ones and stuff out, to the game. And the fact that, given all the circumstances that happened with the hurricane, the fact that they were able to actually focus and win a football game is just very impressive. So I just got to give my hat, tip my hat off to that entire Tampa Bay Buccaneers organization and the performance that they put up yesterday.
Cool. Well, what moved the needle for me, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, but it was hilarious, was Sam Mitchell on NBA TV. Oh, MG. Sam Mitchell lost his mind. He told Chris Miles, listen, I done told you, young fella, you gonna quit talking crazy to me on national TV. He literally told people where Chris Miles lived.
That 325 Tim McDeer Lane, South Bend, Florida.
And then after the fact, I was like, oh, he is so fired. He's done. Stick a fork in him. And then they try to do this PR event. And so after seeing that and after hearing about it, then I found out a story about him and Vince Carter. Vince Carter, who everybody in the NBA knows, and I know as a Tar Heel, is very mild mannered. Dude will give you the shirt off of his back. Apparently, he and Sam Mitchell got into it one day in the dressing room. Vince was hurt. This was when Vince was making the transition from the Raptors to going to the Nets. Mm-hmm. And Sam Mitchell said something to him out of the way. He basically told Vince. He came in the locker room and he was like, "I'm tired of seeing you on this table." Vince Carter was like, "I need you to chill, back up." And Sam Mitchell was like, "Or what?" Vince Carter doesn't like to fight. He doesn't like confrontation. But based on what Jalen Rose, based on what Jalen Rose said, he grabbed Sam Mitchell, put this cat over his shoulder, and body slammed Sam Mitchell. So I'm stunned at the fact that Sam Mitchell wants to catch fists. Like, and I'm telling you, Chris Miles tried to fix it, laughing, ha, ha, ha. Sam Mitchell wanted to punch him in his nose on national TV. Then they tried to do the whole PR, we're neighbors. No, sir. We saw what we saw. You're not fooling me, man.
I'm going to be honest. If someone leaked my address on national television, we're moving some furniture. Because there's no way I'm letting that slide. And then he was about to do it twice.
We're moving furniture and we're moving addresses.
yeah, facts. But
that's what we're doing.
And supposedly he gonna come out and say afterwards, that was a fake address. It's something I made up. I'm like, bro, the damage has been done. Like, you literally, playing or not, you were literally threatening to leak a man's address on national television. And I get it. Some lines you don't cross. Like, even the comments that Chris Miles made, I'm like, bro, like, you didn't have to say that. But at the same token, it's like, you're on national television. You still got to be professional. Like, if somebody says something like that to me, I'll handle that when we go to commercial break or off the air. Like, he kind of embarrassed himself. And like you said, I'm going to be honest. I'm genuinely shocked that brother has a job. Like, I thought he was done. But yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's crazy. But getting into it, wrapping up this episode, been a good one so far. Monday Night Football and Thursday Night Football predictions. Go ahead.
So Monday Night Football, we have the Jets and the Bills. Dad, you're actually gonna laugh when I say this, but I actually think the Jets are gonna win tonight. And the only reason I say that is they have no choice. If Aaron, like, no, real talk, think about it. If Aaron Rodgers if Aaron Rodgers loses tonight, though, there's no scapegoat. Like, everybody's gonna be like, finally, people should have been saying this, but they'll finally be able to be like, oh yeah, Aaron Rodgers was a problem. You can't blame Robert Saleh tonight if they lose. So I think the Jets are actually gonna win that game. And then the Thursday Night Football game is the Broncos versus the Saints. This might also shock you as well. I'm going to go with the Denver Broncos in that game. And part of that is because the Saints looked god-awful yesterday against the Buccaneers. And you got to look at it like this. They don't have Derek Carr right now. They have a lot of injuries right now. And I think Bo Nix, honestly, is going to come down to, I feel like he's going to outplay Spencer Rattler. But yeah, your thoughts.
Yeah, no. You're on crack. The Bills beating the Jets. I'm sorry. Like, we're gonna drug test you.
It's in New York though as well. I'm gonna also add that it's
get it.
Well, technically it would be for both, but it's a Jets game, home game.
It is, and here's what I will say: Aaron Rodgers does tend to, at least the old Aaron Rodgers did, would tend to actually play, in prime time.
Yeah.
In games like this, so I get it. I'm choosing the Bills though. And then on Thursday night, on Thursday night, it's not that anyone cares outside of Colorado and New Orleans. Because, I mean, really?
Yeah, that's a nasty matchup.
That's Thursday night. Come on, man. I'm sorry, Prime stinks. Those games, they stink. I don't know. It doesn't matter to me, to be perfectly honest. But I am with you. I actually have seen Bo Nix start to improve. So, to your point, Derek Carr will be out. So I'm picking the Broncos as well. And but I mean, nobody cares except for folks in Colorado and folks in New Orleans.
Yeah.
So we'll wrap up today's podcast. Want to give you guys a heads up that next week for episode 5, we're going to have basically our tip-off, NBA tip-off special to really just kind of hone in and focus on the NBA season, our predictions for the upcoming season, Rookie of the Year, Defensive Player of the Year, where we see things. And most of you probably know that Jameson and I are Lakers fans, so we'll talk a little bit more about the Lakers. But it'll be our NBA tip-off podcast, and we'll really delve into the NBA season and talk a lot about what we think about the upcoming season. So definitely tune in for that.